All right, good morning, my friends. It's Thursday, and life is it comes at us sometimes pretty fast, doesn't it? I have a friend of mine who Roz, who had her early this morning or this afternoon, or late, just after midnight. She her house caught on fire, and it's gone. So she's good, and every all the people are good, but not anything left of her house. So we're praying through that, and just trying to take care of that and see what we can do as fellow believers to meet needs. And so life can switch in a hurry. And so, hey, we are in the book of Mark, and my lights seem weird. We're in the book of Mark, and man, we are just going to continue following the life of Jesus. And so, you remember yesterday we left you. He had just finished looking or feeding the 4,000, and still it amazes me that the disciples are still trying to figure this whole thing out. So then they jump in the boat. It says immediately. They got into a boat with his disciples and came to the region of Dalmanutha. Now, Dalmanutha is it's an area back on the Jewish area of things. So now he's been on that little whirlwind Gentile tour. Now he's heading back across the Sea of Galilee, into Jewish region. And man, the day's story. It's like we are. Looking at two aspects of hardened hearts from two different angles. And so it's important that we kind of just slow down and think for a minute about our own hearts and whether they're hardened or not. We don't intentionally harden our hearts. We start out with hardened hearts, according to the scriptures. Let's just kind of set the stage for some things, and then we'll jump into this text. It's kind of a short text today, but do you remember John when he wrote his gospel? He says this: "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him, and apart from him, not even one thing came into being that has come into being." So he says, listen, who walked among us, Jesus, that we've been talking about, was God. He was with God. He is God. He was in the beginning with God. Everything that you see has been created by him. And it goes on to say, John says, "And in him was life, and the life was the light of mankind." In other words, when he came, he brought life. Listen, the world is a dark place. He is light. In him there's no darkness at all. So light, visibly encased in the body of Jesus, is on the planet, and all of these people are seeing him. He is the light of mankind. In other words, he lights our path for us so that we can have understanding. And here's what it says in verse 5. "And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not grasp it." In other words, they just couldn't comprehend it. And it says, we go on, it says, a man came, one sent from God. His name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light, so that they all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. This was the true light that, coming into the world, enlightens every person. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, and yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not accept him. This is a great verse, though. "But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, not of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." This is you. We want to be in that camp. Understand that? We want to be the people who have received him. Now, Romans says it like this: "For the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and all unrighteousness of people who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident with them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, that is, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived, being understood by what has been made, so that they're without excuse. Creation itself testifies that there's a God. For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their reasonings, and their senseless hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. And they exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible mankind, of birds, four-footed animals, and crawling creatures. Therefore, God gave them over to vile impurity and the lust of their heart, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. For they exchanged the truth of God for falsehood, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Are you getting a picture here? Hardened hearts. Then we go to Ephesians 4, and Paul tells us this. So I say this and affirm in the Lord that you no longer walk as the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their minds, being darkened in their understanding, excluded from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart. And they have become callous, and they have given themselves up to indecent behavior for the practice of every kind of impurity and greed. But you did not learn Christ this way. If indeed you have heard and you have been taught in him, just as truth is in Jesus, that in reference to your former way of life, you rid yourselves of the old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires. Now, these are the passages that I want us to see, and I want us to grab truth out of before we jump into this, because we're going to witness two sorts of hardened hearts. One that's permanent, and one that is temporary and it's kind of evolving. And I hope that's where most of us fall into, not hardened, but I mean that we're maturing. So let's just set the scene. This is what's going on. He's been in that Gentile tour. They jump in the boat. They head across the water. They land on the shore back in Jewish deal. And this is what the text says. And the Pharisees came out and began to argue with him. He barely gets off the boat. And it says, and the Pharisees came out and began to argue with him, demanding from him a sign from heaven to test him. They wanted, hey, come on. If you're really God, do something. Don't just do something here. Don't just do something on this planet where you delivered a demoniac, or you took care of a leper, or you healed a woman who had hemorrhaging of blood, or you like those aren't big deals. Like you fed the 5,000. You turn water into wine. Do something really big, like do something in heaven. Maybe like what happened in Joshua's day where the sun stood still. Do one of those things. So they're just continuing to crave for more and more and more. And so it says Jesus sighs deeply in his spirit. He says, why does this generation demand a sign? Now, I want to go to the book of Matthew real quick, because he's the other one that kind of shares this very similar story. He adds some details. So let's just listen to this. Wait, I think I'm in the wrong one. Matthew chapter 16. It says, and the disciples came to the other side of the sea, but they had forgotten to bring any bread. And Jesus said to them, oh, wrong one. I want to get up a little faster than that. The Pharisees and Sadducees came up to him. So Matthew shares with us that there were two groups, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, if you see those guys together, something crazy is happening, because that's like the Republicans and the Democrats. The Pharisees are like legalists, purists in the sense of that, but they add all this legalism to it. The Sadducees were a little more tolerant of the world, and they were more liberal, and they didn't believe in the resurrection. So all of that the Lord was going to raise everybody up. They just thought this was all there was, and so this is who have come together now because they have a common enemy, Jesus. And because he's disrupting their whole religious system. So they both gather together and put Jesus to the test, and they ask him to show them a sign from heaven. But he replied to them, when it's evening, you say it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. In the morning, you'll be storms today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to discern the appearance of the sky, but you're unable to discern the signs that I'm giving you now, right now, that the prophets talked about, that I would come. An evil and adulterous generation wants a sign, and so a sign will not be given. I'm not doing it. I love how this is an adamant statement in the original language. I'm not giving you a sign. Just Get out of here. That's basically what he's saying. The only sign I'm going to give to you, and Matthew tells us, and then we're going to jump back to Mark. He says, is the sign of Jonah. And he left them and went away. You want a sign? Yes, the sign of Jonah. They're like, what? Because they didn't understand that Jonah was kind of a reference to being in the belly of the whale, and the transformation is like the resurrection. And so he said, hey, I'm going to give you a sign. It's going to be called the resurrection. Now, let's get back to our story so we can see what flows and what takes place. So it says, he says, and leave it. He said, no sign will be given. I'm not giving you a sign. Verse 13, and leaving them, he then embarked and went away to the other side. So now they get back in a boat, and they're heading in the same Jewish area, but they're just kind of getting in the boat to move on down the way. And so now we come so those are hardened-hearted people. I mean, the Pharisees, look, the Pharisees had the sacred scriptures. They were living in the promised land. I mean, everything that the Old Testament said would happen, happened. They saw John the Baptist. They had everything. They had the light. He's walking among them. And so still their hearts are hardened. There are people out there who are just like that. They could be religious and they're hardened in that religiosity, but they are opposed to everything Jesus. And there's really nothing left for those guys. They will perish in their sins. That's what the scriptures teach. I trust that none of us are at that hardened place, or you wouldn't be here, I don't think, listening to the truth. But we can still have hardened hearts, can't we? And this is the story that we pick up here. It says, and the disciples had forgotten to take bread and did not have any more than one loaf in the boat with them. So they forgot supplies when they, got on the boat, got on the shore, came back, forgot, oh man, we just got one loaf of bread. And he was giving them orders, saying to them, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Now he adds another mix. To beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. Oh man, we got no bread. And Jesus, aware of this, said to them, why are you discussing that we have no bread? What is wrong with you? Now, listen, Matthew says it like this. They began discussing themselves because he said that because we did not bring any bread. But Jesus was aware of this, and he said, you have little faith. Are you discussing among yourselves the fact that you have no bread? Do you not understand nor remember the 5 loaves and the 5,000 and how many baskets you picked up? Nor the 7 loaves, the 4,000 and how many baskets you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you about bread, but I'm telling you. So because he brings up leaven and their mind is on food, they're like, oh yeah, man, Herod and Pharisee leaven, yeah, probably bad, yeah, man, we forgot the bread. What are we gonna do? And he's like, are you guys crazy? Is your heart hardened? Do you not get the concept here? I'm not talking about bread, guys. He says this. But beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, that they understood that he did not say to beware of the leaven of the bread, but the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And so this is our dilemma, and this is where we come down to, right? So what are we talking about here? He said, look, we're not talking about bread. We're talking about truth. The leaven. Leaven is always seen as evil in the scriptures when it's a typology, that you remove the leaven. Right, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. You allow, Paul told that to the Corinthian church, that you let one little sin creep in and you don't deal with it, it will spread, and pretty soon there will be corruption everywhere. And so what he's speaking of here is, listen, beware that the teaching of the Pharisees will get you in trouble. If you lean into the Pharisees, what are they going to teach you? Legalism, ritualism, tradition, none of that's life-giving. And there's a lot of you out in the world today who will fall into that trap of listening to whatever preacher you want to that's going to preach this legalistic tradition kind of a thing, and they're going to demand all of this old form of legalism. Legalism will not save us. We can't earn our way. And so you will begin to harden your heart toward the true light because you're chasing after keeping up with rules and performance and all of those things. But then there's also the leaven of the Sadducees, which was liberalism. And there's a progressive movement in the church today that is tending to let you believe that everything's okay, that there's really no sins, no big deal, and they're even trying to twist the Greek text to make it say something that they want it to say. We see this mostly coming out of the LGBT movement, where they are wanting God to condone the sexual immorality that they have chosen. And so, listen, you can fall into that prey too. And I'm just telling you, that's a hardened heart. Do not believe because it makes nice, doesn't it? Oh, hey, we all get to heaven when we die. There's no hell. This is the Sadducee teaching of this day, the liberalism. And they're just telling us, hey, everything's okay. It's cool. God's going to fix everything in the end. Well, he does make all things new, but there is a lake of fire. And there is a certain standard of what he says that when you hear the truth of the Word of God, you will put away. So when people are telling you not to worry about your sin, or calling your sin not sin, and wanting their ears tickled, you're hearing people whose hearts are being hardened. This was what Jesus wanted to make sure didn't happen to his disciples. Because you remember, he's left the public ministry in that sense. He's sure he's still going to be teaching, but they have condemned their own selves. That's what happened in John 6 when he says, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part of me. And they walked away. They became disillusioned. The Pharisees and all of them are disillusioned. And Jesus is now focused on his 12, his 120, not just the 12, but all the disciples that were hovering with him, so that they would understand what truth and error is. And then Herod, Matthew mentions that. That is of the secular nature of things. Like we're a God unto ourselves. The whole self-love movement, that's all about this secular thing. Within me, I have the ability to do things, and I need to take care of myself. And it's all this focus on self, secular, as though there's no God in heaven. And so this is where he's going there, and so he's awakening them to realize that, listen, you've got to be careful. Satan will masquerade as an angel of what? Light. So that you think you're in light, but you're still in darkness. And it will come in the form of legalism and trying to keep rules to earn your way to God. It will come in the form of just not doing anything and going, well, it's all going to be okay, so I got nothing to worry about because we're all going to be okay in the end. And that keeps you in a darkness because there's no move to holiness. There's no seeking to be righteous. There's no relationship with the Creator. And then there's the secular movement that says it's all about you. And listen, you see that. Just go into some sort of look at the books that are call themselves Christians, and you're going to see tons of stuff that has nothing to do with Christ and everything about you. And so these are dangerous things, and this is what Jesus wanted to share with them. Great story. And which leaves us with some good truths. So let's grab a hold of those today. Let's just look and see where might I be walking in darkness, and where might my heart be hardened. Do I trust God fully? Am I in love with Him? Am I wanting to put off the world? Do I really want to know the Word and I want to live the Word? These are the things that people of light, that's what they do. All right, man, Lord bless you guys. Have a great day, and I will see you in the morning, Lord willing.